I currently work as a correctional officer at the North Bay Jail in North Bay, Ontario, Canada. It's a small northern community of approximately 55,000 people. Our jail holds about 80 to 100 inmates. We're finding that the numbers are rising, especially in the last year because of the fentanyl crisis. It's pretty bad in our community, which poses the question, why is it so bad? Because we are such a small community. Um, we're seeing a lot of overdoses within the institution, and that becomes like a safety and health risk for not only the other inmates, but also the staff that are having to respond to these incidences. Uh, so, as the social worker and healthcare department, they're having to take on a bigger role with trying to figure out how we can minimize these issues moving forward. So, I've decided to do my placement with the social worker at the North Bay Jail. She doesn't have her MSW, but I used to work at a youth custody just outside of North Bay, where I met the therapist that worked at that youth custody, who now resides in North Carolina, but she was really knowledgeable on a lot of things while I was there, and I figured she would be a great fit for my placement and helping me figure out things that I have questions about or concerns with while I'm doing my placement. Um, So right now, I'm currently working as a correctional officer and a placement student at the jail. I thought there would be a few more issues with inmates concerned with my roles, but I actually have found that it's been pretty good. The social worker at the jail, Shannon, she's done a really good job with explaining to them thoroughly that I'm there as a placement student. I'm helping her get things done. And at the end of the day, that's all the inmates want, is to make sure that their requests are getting filled out and that what they're looking for is getting met. So I've helped her a lot with getting simple requests done by the inmates, things like they might want pencil crayons or coloring photos. They might be looking for a specific number for a lawyer. When a new inmate comes in, they get a package, and it's basically an intake package that she's put together. It has all the lawyers' numbers in the area, the legal aid form for them to sign. It has things like Elizabeth Fry and other community partners that they can contact if they need help with housing or shelter or job applications for when they get released. The other thing about our jail is it's a remand center, so the inmates only stay with us until they get sentenced. So that's been really interesting working with the social worker and sitting in on classifications. So basically, the classification is a process where we interview the inmate once they've been sentenced. We discuss their previous employment, what they plan on doing when they get out, where they plan to live, um, whether or not they understand their conditions and parole. We look into their family history, who they have connections with. Do they have friends that aren't going to be poor supports in their life, people that are actually going to see them succeed and hopefully stay out of the jail and stay out of being incarcerated. So I sat in on one of those so far. I hope to sit on a few more, but the one I did sit on, it's crazy to see how long they actually take. So by the time we interviewed him and finished up all the paperwork, it took 8 hours. It took the entire day to complete this task. And she told me that this was a simple classification because he doesn't have a previous criminal record, and his sentence is only 60 days. So it's crazy to see how that took all day. So I couldn't imagine having an inmate that has a very lengthy criminal record and one that might also have some mental health issues that haven't been resolved through the jail or through the hospital. So that was really interesting to sit in on. It was also interesting to see the inmates can ask for early release. It doesn't mean they're always going to get it, but they can still apply. So 3 people have a say in whether he gets released or not. It's the police, the social worker, and the superintendent of the jail. Unfortunately, this specific inmate, although he doesn't have a prior criminal record and he's well behaved with us, and he has a job to go back to, and he's pretty much set up for success when he leaves, we couldn't offer him early release because of his crime and that it was an assault on a police officer. So unfortunately, even though we see that he's basically set up for success because he assaulted a police officer, we also have to say no to his early release because we want to keep that relationship with the police positive and healthy, and we want to make sure that we have each other's backs in those situations. I've also seen some interesting things that I would consider not corrupt, but just people not following their ethical and moral guidelines within their positions. Obviously, like within social work, it's very important that we follow those ethical principles and guidelines. And I would assume that that would be in things like healthcare. I'm seeing a lot of issues with duty to reports not getting filled out. And I do understand that we're a smaller institution, which means a smaller community, but that doesn't mean that we can just not report certain situations. So I did notice an inmate came in, he was high on fentanyl. He was in a drug-induced psychosis. So he was explaining that his ex-girlfriend and her new partner were sexually assaulting their children. The community partners basically said they didn't think that this happened, but they're still going to have to report it. But he had reported this to the mental health nurse at our jail. Well, she never reported it, and I thought that that was pretty bizarre because I would feel horrible, even though she might know this inmate and know that he constantly comes in and knows that this isn't true. I would still feel horrible if I never reported it and that stuff was actually happening to the children. So I really got a taste of duty to report and the impacts it can have on families, and that it needs to happen, even if we know the people and we know that it's probably not true. So it was a good lesson, and also sad to see that people are not following their ethical guidelines. But I am learning a lot. I'm absorbing a lot. I'm really interested in this placement. It's also cool to see the other side of it. I'm used to working kind of just the law enforcement side of the jail, and now I'm working kind of the social work practice within the jail. I've been able to sit in on segregation meetings where we talk about all the inmates that are in segregated like conditions or closed confinement, and we discuss ways to help them get their time out of cell or ways in which we can get them out of seg altogether, because seg used to be used for behavioral issues and now it's just become a holding area for mental health inmates or inmates that we keep them in there for their safety because they wouldn't last in a general population area, which is also a sad situation, which begs the question, how can we help these people get maybe into a psych facility or get better help, because we're not going to help them here. Although I'm working towards my master's in social work, a lot of people that I work with that are working the floor have maybe high school, maybe police foundations. So either they need to offer better training for frontline workers in that respect, especially with mental health, or we need to find the funds within Ontario to open more psych facilities to address some of these inmates that solely have serious mental health concerns